Hey everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. We're streaming live simultaneously in 3 different places. The Heavy on Jets Facebook page to over 20,000 of you Jet fans out there, on YouTube.com, youtube.com/BoyGreen25, and of course on the Twitter account at BoyGreen25 as well. And we're here in the middle of a bye week. The New York Football Jets, baby, are 6-3 on the season. They are, as Robert Saleh said earlier this week in a couple of media opportunities, they are at a place that even the most optimistic Jets fan couldn't have projected them to be. And as the guy that is the self-proclaimed biggest New York Jets fan on the planet, I'll tell you straight up that back in May when the schedule dropped, my best case scenario prediction before the year was 5-4. And I said, man, if you could get to 5-4, you look pretty spicy heading into the second half of your season. Well, guess what? They're 6-3, baby. And I think there is a swag, there is a confidence about this team right here, right now, after beating the Buffalo Bills. Once the Jets beat the Buffalo Bills, I think all of us looked at each other and said, wait just a second. If we can beat the Bills, the Jets can beat anybody, okay? And that just is what it is, baby. The Jets can beat anybody. They just beat the best team on their schedule. They just beat the Super Bowl favorite. They just beat the MVP favorite, okay? So enough of the gosh darn excuses of they played backup quarterbacks or, oh, man, they got lucky a few times. Well, what about that, baby? Holding the Buffalo Bills to their lowest offensive scoring output of the season, and that, of course, being 17 stinking points, and the Jets found a way to get the job done. And you know what? We are about to have a special guest join us here momentarily, one of my favorites in the friggin' business, and he will be joining us here in just a minute. But I'll tell you this, Ragnar, you're damn right I did. Paul did call the playoffs way back in May, and I'll tell you this right off the top as we're getting into this conversation, that the fact of the matter is, a lot of the things that I prophesized about were right. And of course, I don't give predictions. I give friggin' spoiler alerts, baby. And some of those were the AFC won't be as good as people say, like the AFC West. Ooh, look out for the Raiders. What are they, 2-6? What about the Denver Broncos? What, 3-5? I mean, people, things happen in this life and business where teams that we think are going to be good are bad, and teams that we think are bad are going to be good. It is the nature of the beast. It is the cycle. The world continues to spin. So no one should be stunned by this. No one should be shocked by this on any sense, okay, at all, that this should be happening. So I want to just make that clear as well. Again, we're about to have Connor Rogers on here in just a second here. And again, he's one of the best in the business. You guys should all know him. He needs no introduction. And let me just make sure that I gave Connor the right thing here. Excuse me. Oh, I see. I messed up here. Let me give Connor Rogers the... let me give Connor Rogers 1 second, folks. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Let me make sure I give this to the proper one. Excellent. All right. Let me send that over to old Connor Rogers so we could get him on the show here in a second. Sorry about that. There you go, folks. Sorry, we'll have him here in just a minute. Just sent. Okay, there we go. So we'll have Connor in here in just a second to send him to the wrong email address, but we'll get him in here in just a second. But the point is yes, I called the playoffs again back in May, and the reason being is that I had a confidence about the New York Jets, and really there's a few things that surprised us. Obviously, the level of some of the rookies that have performed the way that they have. And, you know, when you really look at some of the jumps we've been able to see from some of these players and the defense, I think that's the one, quite frankly, right from the get-go that deserves to get the love. From last year of being an absolute dumpster fire to transforming into what they have been this season. Again, it's been special. It's been amazing. And there is elite playmakers at every level of this defense, and it's been spectacular. So I think that is truly the secret sauce that has been able to help the New York gosh darn Jets be exactly where they are. And again, it is that elite defense. All right, Ragnar, thanks for the comment. We'll try to get to your comments throughout today's conversation, which again is live. And without further ado, let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend, the everything he brings to the table. Connor gosh darn Rogers is here in person. His people, my people. We made this happen. Connor, what's up, man?
Paul, what's going on, man? Always good to catch up. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. And Connor, I have to say this that you got, for people who missed it, of course, now you're over at NBC. And again, it just makes all the sense in the world. The gods have aligned everything right. You've always had a face for TV, and I've always had a face for radio. So I just love that we're both in the exact places that we're supposed to be. So congratulations, of course, Connor, on the dip over to NBC, a little television action. Matthew Berry, Happy Hour, Fantasy Football Podcast. Very nice, my friend. Very nice.
Thank you, Paul. I always appreciate your support and your enthusiasm. It's been a fun season, man. Obviously, I would say it's my first year doing this much fantasy football, and it's been really cool to cross into because it's pretty natural, right? You have your fantasy
Yeah.
analysts that are like Barry, who's a titan of the industry, of course. And then what's cool about the show we've been doing on Peacock with Happy Hour is that you have Barry, who's the titan of the industry and hardcore fantasy. You have Jay, who has just an incredible background in the betting space and knowledge, obviously, of the fantasy space as well. And then me, who I obviously know the rookie class really well. I think I know matchups and scheme, and obviously personnel usage and everything like that. So I feel like we found a really good blend together, and it's been a lot of fun being a very, very small piece of that show.
Well, it's been spectacular. So we love
Thank
seeing
you.
you on there. Anytime that you're on there, man, that is golden, baby, and I love it. And speaking of that thing that you bring to the table for old NBC for the old Peacock, I have to be honest with that's exactly where we need to go because breaking news: Josina Anderson had an interview with Robert Saleh last night. I'm like, let me take a dabble. Let me see what old Robert Saleh is saying during the bye week. And when he said, we're moving Elijah Moore to the slot, I went, that's an important nugget for the old Connor Rogers interview tomorrow. And I have to ask you, Connor, there's a lot of layers to this. Elijah Moore was the number 34 overall pick in the draft from Check's notes, his work in the slot at Ole Miss. And it seems like the Jets have tried to use him in a lot of different ways in the NFL. I ask you, is that a coaching staff trying to get too cute? Are they trying to outsmart themselves? What is the reason that it seemingly has taken this long? And Robert Saleh, by the way, you guys can check out that tweet, that full video. I won't waste your time playing it now with Connor on the show, but it's on the Twitter sphere, and basically he seemed to indicate this is going to be a full-time transition and going from outside to slot. What do you think is the reason sometimes we see these kind of situations play out where it seems obvious to the fans, play them in the slot, but not so obvious to the teams?
It's a good question, and it's a lot to break down, like you hinted at. It's not one answer or one thing. In these situations, it's never one thing. Now, I watched that clip a couple times, and I was trying to, and I admittedly did not watch the full interview, but I was trying to gauge whether Saleh was acting like they are making a significant move for more slot snaps to be the majority of his reps, or if they're trying to use him in the slot more. I think there's a big distinction there because it's not like Moore doesn't line up in the slot. I think that's a myth.
Right.
Moore obviously is somebody that's hovered more 20 to 30%, it seems like, in the slot recently. And it should be reversed the other way. You'd like him to be probably around 70 to 80% in the slot. Now, where it's hard, right? I know they evaluated him as a slot. How could you not? That's what he played in college. Right. He was great at it. But when they evaluated him, they looked at him, at least the scouting side, and said that this guy we would take this early because we think he can be an elite slot receiver in the NFL. And then you kind of had, I wouldn't say emergence, but definitely a breakout year, a year above expectations for Braxton Berrios, who's a slot only player, especially when Elijah Moore got hurt. So, and then they brought back Berrios because he's an all-pro returner, but they do like Berrios in the offense. And I mean, this isn't sourced or anything, but judging by the manufactured touches they give Berrios that you think would go to Elijah Moore, they clearly like Berrios in that role right now. And who can blame them, because he's done a lot of really good things with those touches. And it doesn't mean Moore is not a good player or the better player long-term or anything like that. I think the staff found something that was working. And really, the reality is Garrett Wilson's their best receiver. And then you need the other receiver on the field majority of the time to be a big blocker like Corey Davis is and was before he got hurt, who's crashing down on edge players and linebackers, not safeties and corners all the time. Elijah Moore can't do that and should not be expected to do that. And Denzel Mims has stepped into that role and done a really good job with Corey Davis out. And these aren't things to make excuses for the staff, because I've been very vocal that Moore's usage has not made sense. I think there are two sides to this argument. Moore originally did not handle it well during the win streak, and the Jets could be using him in better ways. And it sounds like now sides have cooled off, and there's going to be, as much as we believe Robert Saleh, a conservative, a somewhat significant effort to improve Moore's usage, which you would think would be in the slot more. And once again, maybe some of those manufactured touches or quick throws. On the flip side of it, it also needs a buy-in from Moore that this offense, when you look at all of the teams winning a lot of games in the NFL, is doing it in a not totally different way, but definitely in a more unique way where they're not a pass-happy offense. They try to limit how much they throw, and they try to be extremely efficient in how they throw. And the efficiency of how they throw is to Garrett Wilson and often to a guy like Tyler Conklin or the running backs. And does that mean you can improve the passing offense by working in more often? Absolutely. But they need to find that balance. And I think they needed the bye week to make that adjustment. They couldn't do it right when he returned, coming off of whatever blow up reportedly happened. So the long story short here, Paul, is I think they will find better ways to use him, and that is predominantly in the slot. But I don't think that means Elijah Moore steps into number 1 or number 2 targets on this team for the rest of the year. I don't see that either.
All right, Connor, try to translate this because you are the smart guy. We're all the we're the dumb unwashed animals. Because it was interesting because the way Robert Saleh articulated it in that clip to Josina, he said, it's a new position again for the common Madden fan, right? Wide receivers. So I don't think they understand, to your point, using the bye week to help him transition again from quote unquote outside wide receiver to slot exclusively. Because again, he's been floating between both. What is that different? Like, what is being at? Because people said with Denzel Mims, he has to know all 3 positions. Hearing this, people are saying, so Elijah didn't know all 3 positions. So it seems like there's some weird rub here on trying to understand the nuances of playing outside receiver to slot receiver in this offense.
Well, it's obviously knowing what your role is play by play and package by package. I mean, that's the very simple form of it. Now, I don't really know how much I buy in fully if that's not partial excuse. It's real, right? They're different roles. You need to know those roles. But I think also the whole Mims needs to know every position before he ever plays thing was also kind of beneficial to why Mims isn't playing, because it's very obvious how to play Mims. He's Corey Davis's role. And I think Saleh was trying to do Mims maybe a favor by not saying Corey Davis is better and Corey Davis holding down that role. And you're not, Denzel. Like, I think Saleh is very, very good at walking the fine line in giving real answers, but also always defending his players first or protecting his players first. See. And I think that's a quality that's very admirable. And I think that was a little bit of a protection for Mims because Corey Davis got hurt. And Mims has walked in. He played 50 of their 60 offensive snaps last week, Paul, in a win against Buffalo. So Mims has earned back their trust. Mims's role is very evident. That Corey Davis, bigger receiver, once again, crash down on DNs and linebackers as a blocker, slant routes as a route runner, quick throws, possession kind of player, which Mims wasn't drafted to be that. Mims was drafted to be a take the top off the defense, big-bodied vertical player. And credit to Denzel Mims for adapting and taking on that role that Corey Davis's injury has left a void. So I think, yes, there are always things to learn when you're in different, pivot points or positions in an offense. But I don't know if it's necessarily this overwhelming task. They've drafted smart guys. I mean, Elijah Moore is a really smart guy. Obviously, they signed Corey Davis to a big contract because they knew he can come in and handle different roles for them. Garrett Wilson, if anybody listened to me before the draft, every single person that interviewed with him said he was the smartest receiver in the draft, and he'd be able to handle anything thrown at him right away. And I think that's safely lived up to the billing. So I think there is something to it, but I don't think it's overwhelmingly something that fans can't understand or can't know or anything deeper than that.
I will say on Garrett again. I as everyone who's watching this gosh darn show is a huge fan of yours and checked out the Badlands Draft Guide and everything else for your assessment of Garrett Wilson. I'm going to say the thing that surprised me. So he's got the juice, the wiggle. I'm like, okay, that's phenomenal. The toughness. I mean, he's been lit up this season. Yeah. I mean, multiple times where he had to go to the sideline for a second, and I'm like, oh boy, like when he got smashed by the Bengals across the middle, Cleveland, he does like a somersault front flip, and then he goes to the sideline, bucks up for a second, then he's right back out there. He is tough as a nothing. I mean, that was the thing that surprised me, because you sometimes see the frame, not that he's just like, Slender Man out there, but you see him out there and you go, and then he's taking some of these shots coming right back in there. I mean, he's showing a real big toughness I didn't see.
I mean, he comes from Texas high school football. So just because he played at Ohio State, I mean, not to take anything away from guys that don't come from Texas, but I know Garrett Wilson has some roots from there, but he grew up in Texas, and Garrett Wilson is tough as hell, gritty, nasty, just obviously lives to win. His emotions are very obvious in every high or low moment, and I think it's very, very exciting to watch. I mean, my favorite thing was, I noticed it in the Baldy breakdown, and then I noticed it while rewatching the game this morning, is that, Denzel Mims makes that catch that was a massive conversion, and Garrett Wilson is stomping all the way to celebrate with him. I mean, that's the kind of emotions this guy has. The dive on the ball with no helmet on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, which, sure, he created that problem, but he also solved it really quickly. So
that's true.
And going back to just his ability to handle different roles, I mean, looking at it now, 48% of his receiving snaps this year have been in the slot. So that tells you there's a lot of balance in his game. And he's somebody that has been able to handle those different roles Robert Saleh constantly talks about. So, I mean, yeah, he's been everything they could have asked for. And the reality is, in an offense that was a little bit more up to speed in the pass game, not developing a young quarterback, Garrett Wilson could easily be one of, a top 2 favorite for offensive rookie of the year. I think he's 4th right now behind Kenneth Walker and Pierce, who are side by side. Chris Olave on the Saints, we know they can throw the ball a little bit, even with Andy Dalton out there. Garrett Wilson, I mean, when you just turn on the tape, he's open all the time, and he's had a big time year. And it kind of makes you wonder, when the rest of this passing offense does get to a point that they feel more comfortable, what kind of production is he going to have while he's already ripping off 90 to 100 yards week in and week out right now?
Yeah, he's been special. And I love that the Wilson to Wilson thing is cooking up, because, again, remember, Zach Wilson misses the first 3 games of the season. He comes back. It's a little slow with Garrett because, changing quarterbacks and chemistry and all those things, you can't replicate those, especially with all the preseason and everything he missed. And all of a sudden, now it's cooking up. Now it's heating up. Again, we have Connor Rogers on the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Connor J. Rogers. And I see this appropriate response from Dave from New Brunswick. Holy shit, it's Connor Rogers. You're damn right it is. Yeah, we get the big boys on the show coming up on the
Shout out Dave
week.
from New Brunswick, man.
Yeah, there you go. That is the only appropriate response for him appearing, but feel free to continue to drop your questions, everybody, and we'll continue to make sure we work these on the show. So, Connor, the New York Jets, your New York Jets are 6-3. They just took out the Buffalo Bills. They stand a mere half game out of first place in the AFC East. And then there's the weird Josh Allen situation with the UCL injury. Sean McDermott says, he's day to day. We'll kind of see what happens. Didn't practice. I don't really know what's going on there, but I have to ask you this. I'm seeing a lot of questions about it in the chat. Before the year, there was some optimistic Jet fans. Hello, nice to meet you. They were saying, yeah, maybe a playoff. I can squint and see a wild card. But now, after beating the Bills, I don't know if I'm getting a little greedy here, Connor, but
I know where you're going.
Half came out, beat the Bills head-to-head, beat the Dolphins head-to-head. Should we be talking division title? I mean, we haven't seen it since 2002. Is that an impossible dream? Is it a long shot? Is it something that seems realistic when you look at the schedule and what's coming up? And again, we can't not consider this Josh Allen UCL injury as well.
I don't think it's crazy, right? You have to have the conversation when the team is 6-3 and they just beat the best team in the division. The Bills are the best team in the division. The problem is, at some point, you got to get over this New England hump. I've said it for weeks before the last game. You, at a minimum, needed to split with them, and now you're in an 0-1 hole. So if the Jets lose in New England, let's wipe away this division talk and come back to a reality that you're fighting for a wild card. But if you beat New England, take care of business, and you've made it harder on yourself. If you won the home game and lost the road game, you look at it and go, yeah, that's the NFL. That's going to happen, especially against one of the best coached teams in football when you look at Bill Belichick on that sideline. But right now, yeah, you should. Why not? I mean, I don't really understand. How many times can we do the schedule thing? It's so funny to me how all summer we spent, God, those first 9 games for the Jets, like they're going to be, they're going to be in big trouble. And now we get to it. Everybody was looking at it before the Buffalo game because that highly impacted their strength of schedule. And everybody was like, well, the second half of the schedule, the Jets are in trouble. And it's like, how many times can we move the goalpost, move the needle, and just say that the Jets look like they're going to be competitive week in and week out? And I think when it comes down to it, the win against Buffalo has you dreaming bigger. And I think when you look at how the tunnel vision of the roster and the coaching staff, they don't look at things, I think, the way we do, where we're looking at this and thinking, wow, this team is overachieving. They're winning while also trying to protect a young quarterback. That means they're winning with the run game, they're winning with defense, they're winning with special teams, and they're winning with creativity and a scheme that can make life a little easier on the quarterback. And they're doing all of that and winning. And at some point, you just have to realize that their mentality is very different from what their expectations on the outside were. And the huge hurdle is just beating Bill Belichick, because I think if they get, it probably feels like a little bit of a weight on their shoulders, as much as they would never admit that, because at some point you're worn out. You got embarrassed by them last year. The point differential was astronomical. You lost a game against them that you had no business losing. I mean, like when you look at the roughing call, and I thought it was roughing, right? And it doesn't matter.
In today's day and age, yes.
And they're going to call that, right, Paul? Like, we don't like it, but we have to accept it, because if that was Zach Wilson hit on the same play, we'd all be screaming for it. So,
of course.
But Mac Jones threw that ball before he was hit.
He did. It did not affect the throw. His decision to throw that pick was within itself. So, again, it didn't count as part of the play. But.
Yeah, the rule of the play and the penalty doesn't make any sense, and it's something that needs to be fixed at some point with the NFL committee. But besides that, like, you look at the Jets and you go, man, Zach Wilson threw away that game. They had one call swing it from 17-3 to what, 10-6?
10-6 ended up being. They kicked a field goal.
So, I mean, you're looking at it and go, wow, we beat ourselves. We beat ourselves. And now you get a chance at redemption, and then maybe you can, try to keep that run going where, let's be real. If you're 7-3, you're 3-1 in the division.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the teams you play, and you shouldn't do that, because it feels like teams early in the year did that to the Jets, and look how that turned out to them.
Yeah.
But you still look at it and go, why can't we win 10 or 11 games? So I won't get ahead of myself, because they need to beat New England, and they just haven't. They just don't beat New England, and they have an opportunity to change that entire narrative right out of the bye week. New England has their bye week as well. So I think it's going to be obviously a really interesting matchup.
And no doubt about it. It will be very interesting. But as you said, the Jets beat themselves, and really they've found ways to do that a couple of times in some of these New England matchups as of late. So that will be a pivot point. You said that since before the season, that ultimately the Jets season will be dictated about what happens in those New England games. Ultimately, we'll see if that's true. But there's a huge difference, it seems to me, between 7-3 and 6-4. And again, we'll see after the bye ultimately what that becomes. Also, we talked about it before you came on here, Connor, that, Robert Saleh appeared on the Michael Kay show, and Michael Kay asked him straight up. He's like, all right, Robert, in the best case scenario, would you have ever seen the Jets being 6-3? Well, he's like, well, and starts laughing and says, I plead the fifth, but I don't think anyone did, to be fair. And then, so, now that we're in this position of 6-3, and I tell you that, and they have the AVT injury, they have obviously the Breece Hall injury, is that almost even more surprising that they've been able to kind of figure it out in this little mini window that they haven't had them? And what does that do long-term? Have the Jets coaching staff prove to you that they can overcome the fact that they don't have these two key guys? Or is that like an inevitable thing in the back of the head that eventually down the line, there's only so far they could go because you don't have Breece or AVT at the end of the day? Or is that not a factor to you?
I mean, anybody that's listened to me for the last couple of years knows I have planted my flag on this coaching staff. I love this coaching staff. Yes. I knew there was going to be hurdles, and I knew it was going to be a tough first year, because I thought the roster was terrible. I thought they were first-timers. You had a first-time head coach, first-time offensive play caller, young guys. There was going to be hurdles. There was going to be things that they're learning on the job. Look at it like this, Paul. Look at how well they've understood the flow of the game this year, when to be aggressive and when not to be, compared to last year. That to me is growth as well. So, I mean, I was skeptical when you lose who I think is the best player on the team in AVT. And maybe with the emergence of guys like Sauce and Quinnen, maybe that's not the case anymore. But if you asked me in like week 2, I'd be like, man, I really think AVT is the best player on the team, and at least the best offensive player. And then you lose the best skill player you've had since Curtis Martin, or maybe, you have the Brandon Marshall season in 2015, of course.
But I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You get where I'm going. I mean, you're never going to replace those guys. You're always going to look for ways to chip away at replacing what you lost with them. And when you watch what they do now, Herbig's been a really nice depth piece at guard. Uzama, what he's doing as a blocker is wildly impressive and selfless. James Robinson is a fine player. He's not a great player. He's not Bryce Hall, but he's a fine player that I like the way they know how to coach, from Bryce Hall to Michael Carter to James Robinson. With Bryce, it was one of those things where it's like, we can do a toss play, and he's so fast and so big that he's going to hit the hole, and it doesn't really matter. If guys get to their spots, it's fine. With Carter, it's a little bit more where it's like, we need to get him off tackle, but we know he doesn't have that same acceleration, that there's certain things we need to do to free him up to get to that corner. With James Robinson, we're going to try to get the defense a little off balance by counter trap kind of plays, and he has the right feel and timing to hit the inside hole and get downhill. That, once again, that's a really good sign of a coaching staff I don't think this is a coaching staff that goes, this is what we do, and if you're up next, you're going to do it. I think they've understood each player is different, and we're going to maximize what their strengths are to get that out of them. And they're very multi-dimensional in the run game. Obviously, the pass game, they're starting to know training wheels on Zach, training wheels off Zach. And New England, even though he threw the picks that threw the game away, when you watch the tape, there were safety valves for him to not do that. He just didn't do it. And then obviously against Buffalo, he learned that what he can and can't do, and bounced back off that New England game. So I'm a believer in the staff. In the NFL, there's only so many significant injuries you could take where you're going to run out of your bullets, as I always say. But they're making it work right now, and it's really, really impressive. And I mean, this defense is cooking, because we know how much damn talent they have. They are just loaded with talent at all 3 levels, and obviously they've maximized that unit as well.
Yeah, we'll get back to the defense in just a second. But speaking of the coaching staff, I know the Colts hired Jeff Saturday. I heard you guys dabbling in it a little bit on the NFL Stock Exchange, and another episode to come this week, a full deep dive on that. This is a Jet show, so we won't. But the reason why I bring that up is, Jeff Saturday just got hired. Now, I don't want the Jets coaching staff to be poached and vultured this offseason, but Jeff Ulbrich, Mike LaFleur, is it too soon? Maybe a year away from being potential candidates? I mean, there's a little bit of hype, certainly about LaFleur because of his last name, but like Ulbrich, man, what he's been able to do to this unit, they've gotten talent increase, obviously. DJ Reed, great free agent signing, Sauce Gardner and everything, but it's almost like a magic wand's been waved over this unit from one year to the next, and this looks arguably the best defense in all of football. So is it too early for some of that talk on the Jets assistant coaches on the staff potentially getting head coach consideration, head coaching interviews this cycle?
I would be surprised if Ulbrich got a job this offseason, and maybe even interviews would surprise me a little bit, and it's nothing against him. It's just that I think it's a little early because he's a defensive coach. What you need to do to get hired as a head coach coming from a defensive background nowadays is just, you're swimming upstream unlike anything else. I mean, Saleh got the job because, one, he brought a defense to a Super Bowl. I mean, let's call that what it is. Yeah. 2, he's one of the most, well-liked kind of guys in that interview setting. They didn't expect Saleh to be a finalist. They sat down with him when they interviewed 9 people, and they loved him.
Yeah.
So that's a very unconventional kind of path to a hire. Why I would never say no on the floor is because every year there's examples of offensive guys getting hired that you just didn't expect to get hired. And they work out sometimes too. Look at Sirianni. I don't think anybody thought Sirianni was going to get that job right away. And Sirianni's been great. McDaniel, I've known about for a while, but even like when the memes came out with McDaniel and it was like, oh, this nerdy guy, like he's going to be a head coach. Yeah, right. And he got I think a lot of people were surprised he got that job. I wasn't, but I think understandably a lot of people were. So you never say no matter how young an offensive guy is. I don't think he'll be a head coach next year. If he stacks back-to-back years of getting the most out of the offense handed to him, then that's going to happen for him right away. And, when you look at it, you always have to prepare for that, right? I mean, it's going to be it's always interesting too, what your options are to replace that guy. Frank Reich is now on the market. Frank Reich should be an offensive coordinator next year. He'd be great as an offensive coordinator next year. So I think LaFleur maybe gets an interview. But Paul, we got a lot of football left. Like, what if the Jets get hot and Zach Wilson really does figure this out, and now they're throwing the ball around the yard? Then LaFleur's creativity, and he's, obviously his brother has had a lot of success, not this year, but before this year, they were just phenomenal under LaFleur in Green Bay. So there's a lot of different ways this goes, and you just never say never.
By the way, is that the NFL Blitz homage shirt? What are we? Is that what we're representing there?
Bo
By
Jackson.
The way, I put. Oh, there you go. You can never go wrong there. I'm going to be honest. I talked with your people ever since we had that one exchange. They sent me a bunch of merch, so shout out to the people at Homage for that. After that exchange, they said they're working on some Jets NFL Blitz stuff. So I said, about damn time. I don't know what the hell they were waiting for, but I just want to try to put in a good word.
I mean, I have to rep the throwback of Bo, but I would prefer if it was, Keyshawn.
Something. Yeah.
Curtis Martin.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah, know where we're going with this. If you had to pick one Jet on the roster right now for the Blitz shirt, Paul, who do you go with?
Oh, boy. I mean, to go, if they're looking for sales, it's Sauce. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're probably right. I was going to say Garrett Wilson, but you're right.
Ooh, I love that because of the juice and everything. There's no wrong answer here, which is a good first world problem to have.
A lot of people probably would want Quinnen, understandably.
Yes, I was about to say, because that was the first name that jumped to my head, but I'm like, okay, has he reached the sexiness level with the rest of the NFL?
The most marketable Jet in how long? I mean, in how long? Because of the name and everything. And the play helps too.
Shout out to your boy Jay Croucher on Happy Hour. I remember I was commuting, coming up that Sunday, whatever that game was, and he said, hey, just so you guys know, Sauce plus 1,400 odds at Defensive Rookie of the Year. I went, oh, man, plus 1,400. I mean, that's kind of juicy. And I think that was either before the Packers game or one of those games. I just kind of went, interesting. And then the game happened, and then all of a sudden, boom, the odds have flipped the other way, where in a lot of books, he's the favorite now. So it just, again, your boy Jay Croucher may know what he's doing over there with all that Bet MGM shout-outs. He's pretty good. Let's get into Quinnen Williams. I want to get to a tweet that you replied to, and I kind of want to expand it out because it's interesting. So, Connor, you saw the Brian Burns package. Apparently, the Rams are willing to give him, for those who are unaware, the Rams apparently offered the Panthers at the deadline a first, and a second this year. The two first, obviously, are future firsts because of all the first they've surrendered. So it'd be 2024 and 2025, and the second. And apparently the Panthers said, go kick rocks. We're good, which, again, both are crazy. Both the offer and the rejection are crazy. But I ask you, in this hypothetical kind of magical world, because the trade deadline has passed, what would Quinnen Williams command?
Man, it's funny how things change, right? I thought like a year ago it could, and I've always thought Quinnen's great, but he's taken the game to a totally different level with the talent around him. At least that package, right? I mean, 2 ones and a day 2 pick, and it's nice to have this conversation and know that this doesn't matter because he's going to get $20 million a year from the Jets. He has to. There's no way he doesn't. So. I mean, 2 ones in your sleep because he didn't turn 25 yet. He is. We had this conversation on Stock Exchange because we were talking about Jalen Carter and how high Jalen Carter could be drafted. And, I threw back to Trevor. I was like, how many guys in the NFL are like that they play in the interior? They're elite-ish rushers and elite-ish run defenders. And it was like Aaron Donald, Quinnen Williams, Jeffrey Simmons,
Chris Jones was the other one I remember.
Jones, who I haven't seen. I haven't watched enough of Jones individually this year.
To know this year,
but in the past, 100%. Oh my God, he's been amazing. It's a short list, man. It's a short list.
Very short.
Yeah. So Quinnen, if that ever happened, which it won't. I mean, you're starting the combo 2 ones plus.
Let me ask you what's changed, because before the year, and Jet fan, and this goes to show you how the world has changed. Before the year, I'm like, man, maybe the Jets should proactively pay Quinnen, because if you were a betting man, and I occasionally am, that everything is lining up for Quinnen to have the breakout, the second year in the system, the talent around him. And if you guys, being the Jets coaching staff, think the world of Quinnen the way that you do, that sounds like a smart bet to proactively pay him and see what that number is, because you'll probably save a few shells if he's going to blow up the way you think he is. And fast forward, and he is. I was saying back then, I think $20 million a year is the number I would go for. And people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. How can you possibly pay him that much?
No.
You gotta set him off.
It's and now more.
I'm saying, that's it. That's what I was going to go to you with, Connor, because Aaron Donald reset the market at like 30 million something with his new money. And then like second is like DeForest Buckner, Chris Jones hovering around 2021. Does Quinnen firmly go in the middle of that? Is he 25, 26 a year? Like, what is it? Because Aaron Donald is like his own beast, but Quinnen Williams has the most sacks of any interior defensive lineman right now. So I don't know.
I think where you can get an advantage is that he's turning 25 and very soon, like very, very soon. So honestly, why not guarantee at least 4 years, right? Like I know guys get hurt and I know it happens, but he's not playing for you in this contract into his 30s. So just get right. So if you want to get the AAV down, that annual average to 24, we'll say, right? And I don't know. It could be 22. It's not going to be over. I don't think it'll be over 25. I think they can negotiate better than that. We'll see. Make most of it guaranteed. If that,
and then that'll lower the number, right?
Yeah, get the number down. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, this isn't a hard extension. Right. I don't think it's a hard extension. I really don't. I like you, Paul. I was advocating for it over the summer without knowing any, like, what if Quinnen was just like, I'm not talking extension because he knew this was going to happen, right? You bet on yourself. Or if Joe Douglas was just not comfortable going there yet. We don't know. But the bottom line is Quinnen has made himself more money on this extension. And that's good news for the Jets. Him becoming this player and having to pay him that is great news. It's exactly what you could have dreamed of.
I don't know if this is a hard extension, but Bryce Huff, you and Trevor may have done one of the most hilarious things ever. I was going to cut it up myself, but another great Jets fan did on Twitter, so I didn't have to.
Great, yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. Shout out to him for cutting up the clip on the NFL Stock Exchange. Are you guys talking about Bryce Huff again being this closer, gong of the Undertaker, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, who is this guy?
Yeah,
who
the hell? Where I said bell. You nailed it. It's a gong. Yes.
Yeah. And to get like, what the hell? Who's this guy? And it feels like that's what it is, but I have to ask you, how do you pay a guy like that? I was looking at the snap percentages, and he has not played over 21 snaps, I think is the number, like all of this year. And remember, he was a healthy scratch for like the first 3 games of the year. So how do you pay a guy like that? Because the Jets have the luxury of having such a deep defensive line room that they can use him in that way. Not every team has that capability or luxury of, as you said, listening to DMX in the locker room. It's always ready to run out of the tunnel and be unleashed like the Kraken. So how do you pay a guy like that? And he's in the James Robinson world as a former undrafted free agent, late round pick. He's a restricted free agent next year. So they have team control. That would either be a super cheap deal or insane compensation from a team signing him to an offer sheet. So how do you extend a contract like that? Do you just wait? Do you try to pay him proactively? How do you handle that? And what does that look like?
It wouldn't shock me if they try to use the tender on him, right? You said he's restricted, so you have that tender option. If they have that in their pocket, it wouldn't shock me with them doing that because their cap situation is kind of next year. It's not that they're hamstrung, but it's also not like we've seen in recent years. You can go nuts.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you use the tender, you're saving money. And then if he does this again, you're going to pay him more, but you're also taking a little bit less risk on the end of signing him and him getting hurt again or whatever it is. So if he was willing to take the Jacob Martin deal, that's the deal that outlines to me and a little bit more, right? So Jacob Martin signed that deal with the Jets. That was 3 years, $13.5 million, 6 guaranteed. Let's say Bryce Huff would be 3 years, $15 million, 8 or 9 guaranteed, right? And you're talking now, Bryce Huff was a UDFA. He's 24, so he hits free agency, even if it's restricted at 24. So he has that to his advantage. What he doesn't have to his advantage, you can get a signing bonus like all these guys that get drafted. Your UDFA signing bonus, not to call it chump change, because any of us sitting here would gladly take it.
It was $15,000 for him.
I mean, like, this is a guy that needs to get his. He needs to get his.
Yes.
You need to you have maybe one chance to change your family's, money trajectory.
Yeah,
Are
never know.
you gonna say no to that 10 million guaranteed or whatever it is? And maybe he is. I can't speak for him, but some guys are different where they'd be like, you know what, I'm good. I like it here. I like this scheme. I think this scheme keeps me healthy. It doesn't overuse me. It's built to my strengths, and I'm gonna make it further than anybody ever projected me to make it. The other thing is, Paul, that like I always look at politics in these things, and as great as things are for the Jets right now, the 2020 draft class is a disaster. Like it's
oh boy, not good.
Becton's been hurt. Mims has been better lately, but Mims has not been what he was drafted to be. There's been a lot of the guys after that are not on the team. Shout out to the Ashton Davis fake punt conversion.
Yeah, fake punt, baby. Yes, cheers. Yes.
Bryce Huff as a UDFA is someone you could say was part of that draft class. And
that's true.
People look at things this way. So maybe that plays into it as well. But I would keep him. I know Saleh would obviously probably pound the table to keep him because he has a skill set that no one else on the team has with his bend. And it pass rush reps, pin yours back and go. He is very, very quick against tackles, and we've seen a closeout game. So I think there is two very clear options there with the tender or a Band-Aid-ish kind of extension. It's more of how much risk Bryce Huff probably wants to take.
And by the way, I still don't understand how Bryce Huff was inactive for the first handful of games of the season. That doesn't make any gosh darn sense. Let's throw in a couple of fan questions here. Nicholas Joseph. Now, did you and Joe actually bet money on this for the 5.5 for Vegas? If so, what was the payout number for you guys?
I won't tell you the payout, but it has been paid out.
Fair enough.
It has been paid out. Yeah, I did it twice.
Juicy?
I did it twice.
I
bet on it when the odds were like ridiculously in favor. And then I doubled down on it again, even when the odds moved a little the other way. Cause I was like, it might've been after their draft. That's why they did something where I bet on it again. And shout out to the book I used for as soon as the clock struck against the Bills, they paid it all out. So yeah, I know Joe, I'm almost positive Joe did as well. We were very confident in our Jets this year, I guess you could say.
And rightfully so, because I know in past Badlands history, guys, the best bet is betting against the Jets, and you guys made a lot of money there too. So
money Joe and I made on buying up the spread the year the Gase year when they were like just getting throttled, and then we lost all of it when they beat the Rams, right? The Rams.
Oh, right, yeah. They had the Rams and Browns back to back that season. That's too bad.
Yeah,
that's too bad. All right, let's get a couple more in here. Loris Wapples, what's up, Connor and Boy Green? Do you feel that this team has a piece to win the division this year? We talked a little bit about this earlier, but yes, I say yes, Connor.
I agree. If they lost to the Bills, it's like it makes up for the New England loss because now
you expected to try to go 1-1 in that stretch, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and they did it the reverse way that we expected them to. And you brought it up, Paul. It's a really good point. We don't know the Josh Allen severity of the injury. They're really not saying anything. I obviously cover the Mets on the side very, very lightly compared to the Jets, but UCL is like, I feel like I have a doctorate on UCLs at this point because of the Mets. It's a very fake word, like the spraining of a UCLA.
Yeah, right, because it's a
tear. It's a tear.
Right. Yes.
The way you recover is if you, Paul, we do the doctor thing every time we do this show together. You need to rest to recover. So assuming he has some kind of sprain, right? Are they going to push him to play through it? And this gets, I don't know. And I love Josh Allen. I hope Josh Allen is more healthy than they're even leading on, because I think, hey, like what Jets fan doesn't want to beat the Bills with Josh Allen? Like they just did. Exactly. That was awesome.
Right.
But it is it's one of the trickiest injuries in all of sports. In baseball, if it's torn, they're like, you're getting Tommy John, and that's that. In football, it's just very rare, honestly.
100%. And weirdly, Josh Allen actually had a UCL injury in his rookie year. He was forced to miss 4 games. Now, I don't know if it was the same UCL because you have 2 arms, but I don't remember that off the top of my head. But he did miss
throwing. It's a throwing related.
Then it would have to be the same then.
I would think. I mean, because You could play with a sprain if it's not in your throwing arm, if you're playing quarterback, I would think.
But it would only be natural that your throwing arm would have been in the position to have it sprained as opposed to your loose arm. So, yes.
Exactly. I made it's not funny that this happened, but ironic. Remember Flacco threw like 80 million times against the Browns, was it? I literally said, I was like, he's going to need Tommy John.
Yes,
and now this this actually happened to a quarterback, not because he threw a million times, but it also didn't help. So, yeah, it's crazy how these things happen.
Yes. I see Anthony brings us up. Who's going to Foxborough? I know Joe is because he's got same as me. I'm engaged to Bostonian. So I get all the New England stuff. So I know he has a connection where he always gets tickets for that one. Connor, with your new job, I'm assuming there's zero outside of, I guess, maybe the bye week, but there's no games you could go to now anymore, right?
No, we are in the studio every game, which is in downtown Manhattan. So I'm not even on like near the stadium.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's been a very different football season for me. I was used to traveling for college for a while and racing home to get to watch the Jets on Sundays. And now everything on the weekend is based around the Jets. So I love it. It's been awesome. Yeah,
by the way, let's ask about that. For those who don't know, you've been doing SNY pre and post game this year, which is awesome. Of course, you've been doing stuff with SNY for the draft. I say it was Steve Gelbs and Leger Douzable and all those guys. Shout out to him. But all those guys, like you've been having a lot of fun. And I know you have the stock exchange that you got to do like on Sunday nights. How crazy is your Sunday game day? Like, kind of take us through what that looks like exactly. When are you supposed to head on over to SNY? Because you don't have a car, right?
No, I don't have a car. Strategically, I don't want one. And it's like the world is pushing me into a corner, telling me to get a car, and I still refuse to get a car. So, So the Jets play mostly 1:00 games. So I'll give you the 1:00 lowdown. Sundays, I wake up. I try to get out the door by 9:00. Obviously, wake up way earlier than that. And we meet for the show by around like 10:15, I feel like. And then we're on the desk before noon. We go live at noon. We do the pregame for an hour, so 12 to 1. We all watch the game together in a giant conference room. And then we have to be on the desk. Literally, as soon as the game ends, we start. So when they beat the Browns, I would, and the conference room is not like next to the studio at the desk. This is
it's not. Okay.
It's a big space. So you'll be like, I have YouTube TV instead of cable. So like the good thing is I can watch it on my phone. So I'll be like juggling like my laptop and like whatever I'm drinking and watching the game on YouTube TV on my phone while going to get my suit jacket, get on the desk. The game's on the monitors. And like all of that craziness happened in the Browns game when you thought the clock was going to run down. So we do, and then we do post game for like an hour and a half. So that usually ends at 5:30. And then I usually take off my suit right away because I don't wear my suit to work and I don't wear it home from work. I put it on literally for the show. So and I'm in like joggers the rest of the time. I get home as fast as I can. We do Badlands right away because it's the post-game reaction. So Badlands we usually tape at 6:30 to 7-ish. I scarf down food as fast as I can. Trevor and I do what matters most from every game. So that's like 8 to 9:30. And then when like House of Dragon was on, I would try to watch that. But most of the time you watch Sunday Night Football because it's usually Sunday Night Football is always a good game. It's not like you're dealing with the Broncos for the 80th time playing somebody. So, and then I wake up at the crack of dawn to go up to Connecticut, usually to do happy hour at NBC. So the Monday sprint is a blast. I love it. But
that's good.
That first weekday I wake up without having to go somewhere. I just like sit in bed like, whew, man, time to breathe. And I love it, man. I live for this. So it's been a very rewarding year, that I'm super grateful for.
Now, only I could do it, and I told you about it when I went to the only Jets game I went to. I think it had to have been Jets Ravens. I'm walking around in the concourse, right, getting a brewski, grabbing some food, and I look up and all the TVs have you on it.
I love hearing that.
Naturally, so I took a pic. I'm like, pinch my. Connor Rogers, well, we're at the Jets game right now. Look at this guy. Look at him up there. And I know you can't because you're probably, I assume you can't. You're like in the moment. But has there been a pinch yourself that holy crap? Look around. Look where I'm at. Look. Oh my God. I'm doing SNY pre and post game show with all these former Jet guys and Steve Gelbs and everybody.
Probably 2 times. One, when I got the call to get, to do the show over
Mhm.
summer, it was pretty unreal because you got to realize my dad, number one, it's like his favorite show before I was on it. My dad
Oh, wow.
loves like whatever I know it's been branded a couple different
Yes,
ways.
yeah, yeah.
And this is like that's his show. So, and he'll call me. This is for years and be like, "Did you watch this? Did
Mhm.
you watch that?" And whether I did or not, it was just always funny to me. And so when I got the call to do it, it was pretty special to me to tell him like, "Hey, I'm going to be on this show." And his response was kind of like, "Oh, like for an appearance?" And I'm like, "No, like for every game this year, I am on the show next to Willie and Bart
Yeah.
and obviously Gelbs. They're just an amazing crew." And I kind of assumed like how fun it would be. I knew it would be
Mhm.
fun and I knew it would be very rewarding, but it's actually, I think, the most fun I've ever had working it because the crew is just, it's so like, even the stuff off air is so funny. And then the
Right.
second time for me was during the season. I was out at my local bar and I was sitting there and they have tons of sports on Saturdays, college football, and they had on SMY. SMY has on like Columbia or some funny college football team, and the commercial for the show came on, and I'd never seen it because the Mets had been off by then, so it wouldn't be on during that, and
Mhm.
things like that. So when I saw that, and there's me in a suit, and I'm sitting at the bar like drinking a beer, like in like clothes like I'm wearing now. It's
Yeah,
like it
right.
was very funny to me. It was just one of those moments where I was like, I never am one of those people that like, oh, I made it, or I'm this, or I'm that. But yeah, if you asked me, oh my God, 10 years ago that I'd be doing anything like this, I would laugh so hard compared to the path I was on back then.
So what's your dad say? Come on. I mean, so you build it up, you're ready to tell him, and again, you give us the back. I didn't even know there was a backdrop with your father this show is like his show. So what did he say when did you call him? Did you see him in person? What was that like? That's
I
awesome.
I think I called. I'm trying to think. I think I called them because I don't get down there a lot during once the
Yeah,
season
right. You
starts.
said
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and he was just like, because he's seen the draft special, so that
Mhm.
was really cool. And then the fact that once the show really got rolling, he just, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, because for them, they have us on at noon when the pregame starts, and they watch the game. And as soon as the clock strikes zero, my mom is actually like the remote police because my dad will see like
Ah.
what's going on with other games and forget that. A lot of people forget we're on like immediately as soon as the
Yeah,
game ends,
right.
the show starts, and my mom's like, "No, like this is on." So
Our sonny's on there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I get that, and I heard from a lot of people back home, which is really nice. It's just really special. So yeah, it's been really cool, man. It's been really freaking cool.
Well, we're so happy for you, man. Again, I'm going to a Jets game. I'm picturing myself seeing it. It's really cool to see all your success. Let's quickly wrap up here. You're a busy guy. We got a super chat, so let's throw that up there. Appreciate the change in the old tin cup. I mentioned it to
Ooh,
Connor before last draft season. Yeah, where I said, "Hey, Connor, I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're nearing 3,000, baby. We're
oh man,
moving
good
and
for you,
grooving."
Paul.
So
That's awesome.
whoop, not quite SNY, maybe like a commercial before SNY, but we're getting there, baby. We're getting there.
It's
So,
no joke.
yeah, let's show this from Abe Lab. $10. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support on the show. Curious to know your thoughts, and I think this has changed a little bit based on what we've seen with Justin Fields running for checks. Notes 178 gosh darn rushing yards the other night. But we'll get this matchup. I saw a Bears fan tweeted this at me that it's that one meme where you have like all the Grim Reaper and all those doors open with a blood path, and Justin Fields has been checking off Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and all these other quarterbacks from the draft class on it, and he's waiting to knock on Zach Wilson's door for the Jets-Bears matchup coming up. That's the next home game for the Jets. So I guess we're going to get
Careful what you
our
wish
sight
for
of
with
this.
that Jets defense, but sure.
That's for sure. But so what do you say? And you're our draft guru. Who is the higher steering, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields? And obviously, feel free to use whatever we've seen thus far in their careers.
That's pretty tricky, right? Because they were both
Yes.
top 5 players for me.
Mhm.
And I think they both were so gifted physically and are gifted physically. I think Fields unlocking this running gives him the higher ceiling, but that doesn't ever really mean anything I shouldn't say that. It's not that it doesn't mean anything. It's that ceiling is what we get sucked in by with quarterbacks when often the floor is so vital. And
Mhm.
I mean, Fields has taken big steps in game by game because of them designing runs and him excelling in that, and him being a willing scrambler, something that he wasn't consistently competent in the past. So now I want to see that running really open up Fields' throwing in a game they can win. Right now with Wilson, it's been kind of interesting that he has the same problem where he's not running enough, and we saw him run a little bit more against the Bills. I think when he's on as a thrower, you see so much promise, but him managing the game, because that's what they need him to do right now. And perfect example is the Bills game, and he made some big throws in that game as well, is what excites you. So I guess I would go with Fields as the higher ceiling, but I think there's so much to be seen with them and Trevor Lawrence right now. Like there really is. I'll tell you, I'm very low on Mac Jones right now. And it's funny to think where we were with these guys last year, where it was like, how did Mac fall beyond these guys? Wilson stinks, Fields stinks, Lance can't get on the field, and Lawrence was spinning. Mm-hmm. And now you look at it and go, man, Trevor Lawrence has had a roller coaster season, but there's been some big moments for him. Wilson, the same thing. He's had some really bad down points, but he's also had some nice highs. And Fields had a horrible start to the year, and recently he looks really good because they've tailored the offense around him. So, and Mac Jones, I just can't say that about him in any aspect. So it's a really good question. I would say Fields, but I think these guys, they just need to play more, Paul. They both got hurt last year. They both were swimming at times this year. And I know people don't care about wins, but man, like as much as people hate on Zach Wilson, and I'm not saying he's the reason they're winning all these games, they beat the Bills, and he did a lot of things the right way, and he had a couple key conversions with his arm and legs. That's the promise. So, yeah, I know it's a long-winded way of not really necessarily answering, because I always evaluate quarterbacks in a 3-year window when they come out of college, and we're just not close to that yet. We're, halfway? And if you count their injuries, we're not halfway. So I love both of these guys, so I'm pretty excited about both of them right now.
Thank you, Ape Lab Studios, for that. I've seen 100 of these, and I don't know how often you've been asked about this, Connor. Barney Miller, Connor, is Bart as funny in person as he is on camera? We've gotten at least 7 of those people saying it. Funnier.
He's 100 times funnier in person than he is on camera. Spending the day with Bart and Willie and Gelbs and our producing team. But the thing is, right? Like we laugh at the jokes, we laugh on the desk, we have all that fun. I think people don't appreciate how smart they are in the longer form off camera, right? Because we're on camera, you're tight, you're reacting. And I think I'm biased. I think the show is great in terms of how much information it gives you or tries to give you. But when you're watching an entire slate of games with them, the things they see before it happens or the things they can explain after it happens, I appreciate that just as much as the humor. And I always joke around, like if you just put a camera in our conference room that was a live feed of what's going on, I think it would be the most entertaining consumed thing in the Jets fan world outside of the actual games.
Well, that's awesome, because I heard you, I think it was Badlands is the place you were saying it, that, again, Willie Colon, former offensive lineman, former Hog Malley, New York Jets, and again, seeing it from your perspective as you've covered drafts and normally from the quarterback to an offensive lineman saying this or this on a certain play, I can only imagine Bart Scott being on the defensive side, too. That's got to be, again, fascinating banter as you guys are watching all these games together. That's got to be super interesting.
Well, and they played against each other, so it's like it's.
That's true. I forgot about that. Right? They weren't. Yeah.
It's even funnier when you hear the stories of how when they played against each other, and you know how much Bart, how much stuff he could talk, which is great. And Willie's a little bit more chill, but I mean, we saw Willie in green and white. Willie also has a killer instinct where he could bury you 6 feet. So. I mean, it's just awesome, man. It's a blessing. And I don't really throw that around lightly because I don't really say stuff like that. But with them, it's awesome. And I think we found a sweet spot. It helps the Jets win, right? Like I'm never gonna hide away from the fact that Jets winning has helped our show hit a groove that is just unbelievable right now. But it's beyond that.
Let's throw in this last question here, and thank you, Ragnajet, for this. I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and I'll add to Ragnar's question. He says, Connor Paul, what's his chatter about Linval Joseph with the Sheldon Rankins injury? Again, he had a dislocated elbow out anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. We'll see. Jets are not putting him on IR. They don't even have to make that decision, by the way, till after the bye. Linval Joseph is a guy they've kicked the tires on with a veteran visit. They got a couple of guys in the practice squad, and Tanzel Smart and Jonathan Marshall, and obviously the 3 on with Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard, Trevor Sycamore. Shout out to you, brother, for our Nathan Shepard guy, and then Quinnen Williams as well. What do you think? Go after a Linval, promote from within? What's your thoughts?
The draft guy in me would love to see Jonathan Marshall get a shot. He's a freak athlete. He flashed over summer. Let's not forget he had some moments. So, but it never hurts bringing in a vet, right? Because with a vet, you can ask them, hey, don't make this mistake. With a young player, it feels like they want to win the game. And who can blame them? Like they've been waiting to wear that uniform in live action for how long? So they have the pulse of the team. Salah and Ulbrich have the pulse of the team of what they need, right? Do we need a guy that can come in and, I hate do your job, but do his job? Or do we need a guy that we're going to limit his workload, but we think he could fly off the ball from the interior and give us some juice, give us some pop? And that's a decision they have to make. And you know what? You're at the point, Paul, where you could maybe try out the Jonathan Marshall experiment for 2 weeks. And if it doesn't work, tell Linval, hey, man, we got you on speed dial. Be ready to go. Stay in shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So, Connor, as we're wrapping up here, I just have to say, how does it feel? You're the draft guy. That's how you've been known. I know you're no longer at Bleach Report. So is that, by the way, quick question as part of my rant here. Is your draft coverage going to be exclusively with NFL Stock Exchange this year? Is that how it's going to work out?
I don't know yet, which is a funny thing to say. As we sit here in November, I don't know, and I'm really excited about that. Which
is good. Yes,
it's really good. It's I've been lucky to do the BR draft show for years. Feel like I kind of helped one of the people help build it. I was behind the scenes
when they were a much smaller company, right?
Yeah, I used to be one of the producers for it. Yeah. So being behind the show to help build it, being on the show, I would never rule out ever being a part of it again, right? There's nothing saying I can't do that, but the door's open right now. I will be doing Stock Exchange 3 times a week, for the rest of the year. So there's always a giant draft element there, but where my rankings live, where my pick by pick grades live live in the moment, what I air on, maybe after the new year, I'll have a pretty clear picture of that. And that alone is honestly, Paul, it's really, really exciting.
By the way, what's the, unrelated note, what's the agent information in case anyone would be potentially interested in signing a free agent Connor Rogers for any potential draft coverage? What's that agent info you could give out here, Connor?
I am with WME Sports. They are, is one of maybe the best professional decision I've ever made. I love, who I work with over there. Phenomenal. Take care of me. That's why my face is plastered to a point where people are probably tired of me. I appreciate you still inviting me on, Paul. Hopefully people don't have Connor fatigue. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay, so there you go. You just heard it there. And what was that? WME? Is that it, Connor?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So again, just want to we'll clip this sort of on Twitter, try to build up a little bit of an audience, see what we can do for you, Connor.
You don't have to do that.
That's our part for us to you. But with that being said, where I was going to go with all this is that you being a draft guy, how does it feel not having to I'm bringing you on here. We'd be talking mock draft. Hey, free agents next year. Maybe in 5 years they could develop into something. As if they're freaking 6-3. We were just talking division races, playoffs, this and that. How does it feel, Connor? I know you're a draft guy, but I got to imagine feel pretty good.
It's odd, right? Because I had the luxury that over summer, I had time to really hunker down, and I did top 5s for every position. I probably
Which was great for the NFL Stock Exchange. The summer scouting was awesome. Such a cool deep dive for fans. Again, you guys can still go catch all that. Just to jump in and interrupt, to say the best draft prep, and I know you guys are saying it, doing it, but for me as a fan who covers the draft not anywhere near the way you guys do, just for my own personal pleasure, it made me more prepared for a college football season and/or draft season than I've ever been prepared for in my life. So cool. But yes, go ahead. So
thank God we did that, because we got through over 100 players. We each made our own top 50. We made a top 50 for the show, which is just me and Trevor building the board together. Because I've been busy this season, where we do a stock up every week, so I'm adding multiple players every single week to the draft prep, but the Jets are always so bad that in October, I'm telling people 3-round mock drafts. And this year it's like,
Right, you're
no,
double dipping, right? Yes,
yeah,
with your
so
work.
exactly. So it's much more in a vacuum, the draft stuff, where the Jets are focused on winning. And then when not when their season ends, probably after the new year, I'll be full bore draft and obviously still Jets as long as they play. But when their season ends, yeah, it'll be much more intense. It'll be you go from a board of 50 to I had 300 and I don't even know, 350 last year, something like that on the board. That's
Wow.
just the rankings, not the actual
Yes,
player
right.
evaluation. So yeah, it's I'm glad I got a head start because I needed it this year more than I realized.
Yeah, which is awesome. Connor, you're one of the best in the friggin'
you,
business. I say it every gosh darn time, but we got to keep reminding you, Connor, just in case you're not hearing it in your own commercials, apparently now. So that's fine too. But Connor, I always appreciate the generosity with your time. And as you've risen through the business, I always appreciate you carving out time, man. You're one of my favorites. You're one of the best. And I love it, man. So thank you so much for always giving us time here. We always appreciate you, man.
Anytime, Paul. I'm so excited to see you grow and the fact that you're already up to what, 3,000 now, you said?
Yeah, we're almost at 3,000. We're at like 2.8 and change. So we'll see if this Connor bump can get us a little love. We'll see. But very nice.
I love hearing
exponential growth, baby.
I love hearing that. I know you're grinding. I appreciate all the support and clips you put on Twitter for us, the Stock Exchange show, and everything we do with the Jets as well. So it's always a pleasure coming on here, especially during the bye week. I could like breathe a little bit. I haven't been able to. I haven't been able to do a lot of other Jets stuff during the season. So the bye week's a good time to sit back and catch up, and then the season will end, and where we go from there.
100%. And as a reminder, as we're sending Connor off here, Badlands paid subscription service. So for your New York Jets love, if you want that from Connor, and for free for the draft stuff, is the NFL Stock Exchange, as he mentioned, 3 times a week. It was 2 times a week a little bit during the summer, and now 3 times a week full bore the rest of the way. And of course, the happy hour with Matthew Berry, baby. Very nice fantasy football. I know you were a fantasy football guy anyway, the dynasty drafts, and I hear a bunch of the big time people, Trevor Sikkema and a couple other guys are all in there with you. So again, it's a college draft that makes sense with all your guys' prep. So you're everywhere, man. So again, it's not going to be very hard to find Connor Rogers if you're looking for him, just like they do on that little Matthew Berry promo. If you want to hear more Matthew Berry, go boom, boom, boom. If you want to hear more, you're welcome, people.
I love it, man. Connor Rogers. I love it. Thank you, Paul.
There he is. Connor Rogers, everybody. And we'll see you next time right here on the channel. Thanks.